My name is John. Many years ago when I was young, it started with rain. The rain was heavy and fast. I sat in my car and looked at the house. My hands were shaking. My heart was loud. I saw a light in the window. I saw my wife. She was with someone. It was a man. I knew him. He was my friend. They were close. They were smiling. I watched and did not move. I could not move. The rain hit the car. My world broke in silence. I wanted to open the door. I wanted to run to the house. I wanted to scream, but I did nothing. I sat there like a stone. My eyes were open, but my heart was closed. I felt cold inside. I felt pain, but no tears. I watched the window. My body stayed still. The night got dark. The rain did not stop. The picture stayed in my mind. My life was not the same anymore. I did not go home that night. I stayed in the car. I turned off my phone. I closed my eyes, but sleep did not come. I thought about my son. He was 5 years old. He had a small red ball. He loved to laugh. He loved bedtime stories. I thought of his small hands. I thought of his smile. I felt pain in my chest. I did not want to go home. I did not know what to do. In the morning, I went home slowly. My son ran to me. He said, "Good morning, Daddy." I picked him up. He was happy. He did not know. He did not see the truth. I looked at my wife. She looked down. We did not speak. The air felt cold. My smile was not real. My hands were heavy. My heart was far away. I wanted to cry, but I did not. I made eggs for my son. He laughed at the shape. Told me about school. He talked about his toy car. I smiled again. I said, "That's great." But my head was full. I could still see the window. I could still see her and him. That picture was strong. It stayed with me. I tried to forget, but I knew I never could. My heart was broken that night. I tried to live like before, but nothing was the same. I woke up early and smiled for my son. I made his lunch and walked him to school. I talked with other parents and said kind words. But inside I was tired. I was acting every day. I was not the same man. My heart felt heavy. I looked okay outside, but inside I was lost and cold. At work I sat at my desk and stared at the screen. My boss gave me tasks and I nodded. I did the work, but my mind was far away. I kept seeing their faces, my wife and my friend, their smiles, their eyes, their hands. It played again and again in my head. I wanted to forget, but I could not. I was quiet. I was broken inside. Each night I came home and played with my son. He showed me his drawings. He told me stories. I smiled at him. I told him, "Good job." I gave him hugs and kissed his head. He gave me love and I gave him all I had. But when he slept, the silence came. The house felt dark. I sat on the floor and stared at nothing. My chest hurt, but I said nothing. Sometimes she tried to talk. She said she was sorry. She cried once. She said it was a mistake, but I could not answer. I listened, but I did not speak. Her words were like wind. They came and went. I did not trust her voice. I did not trust her eyes. I only looked at the wall. My mouth was closed. I felt far away. I felt like I lived in a dream. One night I stood in front of the mirror. I looked at my face. I looked tired. My eyes were different. I was not that man from before. I asked myself, what now? I had no answer. I wanted peace. I wanted sleep. I wanted to stop thinking, but the pain was strong. The picture was still there. My life had changed. I could not go back. Days passed, and I kept pretending. I laughed when I had to. I worked when I had to. I spoke when people spoke to me, but I was not really there. I was just moving, just breathing. At night I sat in the dark. I looked at the ceiling. I listened to the clock. I wanted time to stop. I wanted to run away, but I stayed because of my son. He was my light in those dark days. He came to me with his toys. He told me, "Daddy, play with me," and I did. I played with him. I smiled for him. I gave him all the love I had. He laughed, and I felt warm. But when he went to bed, the cold came back. My smile faded. The pain returned. The house became quiet again. One morning I saw them together again. It was by accident. I was driving home from work. I saw them in a cafe. They were sitting close. I felt my chest burn. My hands started to shake. I wanted to walk in. I wanted to shout. But I just drove away. My heart broke again. I felt weak. I felt small. I thought I was healing, but I was not. That night I could not eat. I sat at the table looking at my food. My son asked, "Are you okay, Daddy?" I smiled and said yes, but my hands were cold. My stomach felt tight. My wife watched me. She said nothing. I knew she saw my pain, but there were no words left between us. Only quiet. Only space. I looked at my son. I stayed for him. Later I walked outside. The air was cold. The sky was full of stars. I sat on the steps. I looked up and breathed slowly. I closed my eyes. I thought of a better life. I thought of a place with no pain. I did not want to hate. I did not want to cry. I wanted peace. But peace felt far. I opened my eyes. The stars looked down. I felt very alone. I started walking every night. I waited for my son to sleep. Then I left the house. I walked through quiet streets. The lights were soft, and the sky was dark. I looked at windows and wondered about other people's lives. Were they happy? Did they smile for real? I felt like a stranger in my own town. Each step was heavy, but I kept going. I walked to stay away from my pain. Sometimes I passed the school. I looked at the small chairs through the window. I thought of my son sitting there. I thought of his laugh, his smile. He was the only thing keeping me whole. I whispered, "Thank you to the night sky. Without him I would fall." I did not know what I was doing, but for him I got up. For him I tried to be strong. One evening my wife left the house. She said she was going out. I said nothing. I just nodded. I sat in the living room with my son. We watched his favorite show. He laughed and held my hand. I smiled, but I felt cold inside. The door closed behind her. I listened to the sound. It felt like a cut. I knew where she was going. I tried not to care, but I did. I thought about leaving. I thought about taking my son and going far away. A place where no one knew us. A place with new air, new streets, new mornings. But I had no plan. I had no money. I had only pain and dreams. I sat alone in the kitchen that night. I wrote down thoughts on paper. I crossed them out. I wrote again. Nothing made sense anymore. The next morning I looked at myself again. My beard was longer. My eyes were tired. I touched my face and asked, "Who am I now?" I was not just a father. I was a man who saw too much. A man who lost something deep. I made my son breakfast. He smiled and said, "I love you, Daddy." I hugged him tight. That was the only thing that still felt real. Winter came. The days were short and the nights felt longer. Cold air came through the windows. I wrapped my son in warm clothes and held his hand tightly. We walked to school in silence. He kicked small rocks and smiled at the snow. I smiled too, but it was weak. My smiles were tired now. I missed the old days. I missed who I used to be. I missed feeling alive. My wife was still in the house, but she was far. We spoke only about simple things. Dinner is ready. He needs help with homework. We lived like strangers. Her voice was soft but empty. I stopped asking where she went. I stopped caring about her lies. My heart had closed its doors. I looked at her and felt nothing. That scared me the most, feeling nothing at all. One night I found a picture. It was old. It was from a summer trip. We were by the sea, holding our son between us. We looked happy. I stared at the photo for a long time. I touched the faces. I remembered that day, the sun, the waves, the laughs. It felt like someone else's life. I put the photo in a drawer. I didn't want to see it again. Later that week, my son asked, "Why don't you smile like before?" His question hit me hard. I hugged him close and said, "I'm just tired." He looked into my eyes for a long time. Then he nodded. He didn't ask again. That night, I cried quietly in the bathroom. I covered my mouth with a towel. I didn't want him to hear. I didn't want him to know how broken I was. After that, I tried harder for him. I read him more books. I cooked his favorite meals. I walked him to the park. I watched him run and laugh. I told him stories. I said, "I love you" every night. But the pain stayed with me. It sat in my chest like a heavy stone. I was living two lives, one for him and one alone inside my heart. I remember the day I made my choice. The sky was gray and the house was quiet. I sat alone in the kitchen while my son was still asleep. My tea sat untouched on the table. I looked at the walls, the photos, the silence around me. I felt tired in a deep way. I could not stay in that house any longer. I needed to leave before I lost myself completely. I wrote a short note and placed it near the window. I packed a few clothes and my son's favorite book. I walked to his room and kissed his forehead. He didn't wake up. I whispered, "I love you," and held his small hand for a moment. Then I opened the door slowly. The cold air touched my face. I looked back one last time, then stepped into the street. We moved into a small room on the edge of town. It was not much, but it was ours. My son looked around and asked, "Is Mommy coming?" I said softly, "Not now." He nodded and hugged me. That night I sat beside him until he fell asleep. I cried, but it felt different. I was still broken, but something inside me was starting to breathe again. Life became simple. I took him to school in the morning. I worked at a small store nearby. We ate dinner together, told stories, and laughed a little. The pain was still in my chest, but it didn't speak as loud. I looked at my son and felt something warm. I was not the same man, but I was still his father. That gave me the strength to go on.